Always, always.
Yeah. All right. Here
And
we go.
yesterday you read I would say you read medium high. Can you read more medium?
We'll find out. I'll do my best. 3. Many of the same themes reach a wide reading public. First in the pessimistic, then in more hopeful, and then again more pessimistic vein. The rife alienation that James's and his collaborators perceived in American life, if one can believe Albert Camus, grew out of the directive novel into the entire essentialist philosophy. Ralph Ellison, Visible Man, building upon themes that James's friends Rich Wright had developed earlier, pointed up that James had written had written about communists in Harlem, but without proposing any solutions. Solely over generations, the Hegelianism of the young Marx played a role in the revival of another left, as did the vision of corporate liberalism, a general approximation of state capitalism and rationalist totality. But the late 1960s, the connection between culture and radicalism had become an unpervasive topic of discussion, and not only within the left. Culture was now recognized as a powerful agent, if by no means coherently perceived. And in the time that was followed, the congruence of social history and radical commitment has been made abundantly evident, indeed becoming a Marxist scholarly commitment of hundreds who emerged with university training from the 1960s, a vision of ordinary people in the United States and everywhere, searching urgently for the means to remake the quality of their existence. The new left, the women's movement, and above all, the black movement, seemed at points to be expressing in political logic and an insightful kernel James had opened up in his venture beyond orthodox Leninism, and the turn towards the working class by the new left during the early 1970s carried along his imperative to relocate the blue-collar source of the future Soviet. James's specific contribution and the totality of his view, with the partial exception of the emphasis of that emphasizes on black initiatives and self-activity, seem to have been lost on the cutting room floor. Part from the rationale surely resides in the groupuscular character. We're gonna look that word up.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's Rubel's, but I've never heard it before.
A small fringe or splinter group of political activists. Groupuscule character of James's earlier efforts. Their publication and language so restricted by the Trotskyist context that 20 years hence, the confused Fourth Internationalists whom James has singled out for the critique took the aspect of ghosts from some vanished political dynasty. You have some background.
Sorry?
I think it's sorry. And his books were, aside from the Black Jacobins, for all practical purposes, physically unattainable. There is also a deeper reason that goes back to the conflict of the 1940s, when James redresses Trotsky's estimation of proletarian physical diminution. Making sure. Yeah. A spiritual decline.
Diminution. It's D-I-M-I-N, dim in, and ution.
Okay. The spiritual decline under later capitalism, he militantly defended the thesis of Marx that in the very crisis of capitalism, the proletariat is prepared socially for its task by the very mechanisms of capitalist production itself. A few years after World War II, nearly every avowed radical movement, whatever its formal ideology, shared Trotsky's premises. Pessimism, Stalinism, and social democracy in particular had gone over to the belief that armies, bombs, political maneuvers, and foreign policy, rather than the working class, would rule the fate of the world. In James's own Workers' Party, the thesis of retrogressionism, as one key writing placed a question mark over the ability of the proletariat to reassemble a revolutionary leadership, to take power before it is overtaken and destroyed by a degenerative tendencies of capitalist civilization, of which threatening atomic war is the most potent force. Against this defeatism, every instinct of James's rebelled, but his voice cried into the wind. By large, with the exception of some rather brief political periods and some groups, the fundamental pessimism as regards the working class has never lifted. Indeed, one can say that it has permeated the best as well as the worst of political writings on the left, from philosophies of Hubert Marcuse to the social economic of Michael Harrington, to the cultural renunciation. Hold on a second. I already got my first thing.
Oh, sorry. It's ruminations.
Ruminations of Ishmael Reed. When today, what's up? What's going on now? When today, the noticeably undoctrined socialist writer looks to the possible future of, quote, a semi-corporatist liberalism, a technocratic authoritarian neoconservatism, or in the best case, a radical democratic liberalism with populist elements. He cites as his future-looking guide the same Daniel Bell, whom James is leveled against in 1949 for a substituting technical for human solutions and for excluding the socialist possibilities altogether. Even at the mundane level of tactics, many of James's complaints, the Marxist response to the widespread backwardness and assertions that it was not backwards but needed the leadership of a still unformed vanguard, have not been essentially outdated in 40 years. The obscurity of James's contributions, beyond the problems of verbiage and context, can be summarized in the proposition that Marxists have not yet reconciled themselves with the subjectivity of the revolutionary subject. Rather, this be the locus classicus proletariat is not even an essential matter. James often glimpsed moments when the peasantry entering into the transition of the modern order can take the leadership of the whole social matrix, and he stressed that in the outbreak of the future, a council of transformation. Meanwhile, among the Marxist political groups, not even the most spontaneous have become seriously interested in popular life as a whole beyond the factory gates, save to deplore consumerism, to place, quote, real, i.e. economic class struggles against such delusions, to cite a left-wing general socialist realist artist here and there who has supposedly captured the, oh my gosh, the palpitating dynamics of contemporary conflicts. Only among the smallest minority have the once widely attempted notion of black proletarian combativity. Let me make sure.
You got it. That's why I was quiet.
Okay. Been linked with
Combativity.
Been linked with a concept that as levers for the rest of the working class and and broader society, means for insights about the culture, particularities, and possibilities across the demographic map. James, be it recalled, never elicited guilt from white workers. He made it clear that for them and the rest of the nation, to accept black equality in the fullest sense meant an acceptance of dramatic change in the whole social order. Meanwhile, as the world revolutionary process continued to accelerate, things remained in a status for more than 2 generations. Socialists were committed to one version or another of the state, with its preputation of mental versus manual labor, while communists waited for the working class to join some sort of communist party en masse, bypassed, or in the future, James's contribution have never seemed quite timely. James's perspective defies empirical proof in the sense that nothing but barbarism or socialism can finally demonstrate such political conclusions. During World War II, James persistently referred to socialism or barbarism alive at the same moment, battling towards a finish that has only been postponed in all the decades. But there is something more that James wrote from a deep sense of history, and that the life and the intelligentsia as a whole have been unable to unwillingly to absorb. We do not idolize the workers, but the very bourgeois society, which has produced its most gifted body of thinkers and artists, has also given birth to the proletariat, which instinctively demanded the application of itself, of very values which the philosophers and the various classes they represented.
Sorry, I hate doing this. If I don't have it unmuted, I can't tell you when you mess up. So, it's demanded the application to itself of every value.
I said that. Which the philosopher and various classes they represented had demanded throughout the ages. Spinoza and Kant, who stand aghast at the... Yeah, but every time you unmute, you get background. That's the problem. I kind of get distracted by it. I'm sorry, it's not your fault. At what the average worker takes for granted today, but he does not demand them as an individual or in the primitive manner the earlier Christians did. These are the values of modern civilization. They are they're embodied in the very web and texture of the lives of the masses, of the people. Never were such precious values so resolutely held as necessary to complete living by so substantial and so powerful a section of society. Socialism means simply the complete extension and fulfillment of these values in the life of the individual. This is even more than the prophets had foreseen, since the continuation of class society nourished in a variety of liberational forces that might have been anticipated in the marrow of the revolution. Yet it is also the incident, dream, and utopia realized.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. To James, who earlier saw the human...
The sound went out and then came back.
Okay. You still have background.
Yeah, because I wanted to tell you something about what we just read. If
Yeah,
that's
what do you
okay.
want to?
Do you want me to go real fast?
I'm waiting for you to.
I was just asking. That was a serious question. SRS. So it's talking about the thinkers and the artists, and um, and like and those thinkers and artists have also given birth to a proletariat, and it aligned itself with every value of the philosophers, the various classes they represented. Um, that's all the people. That's all the people. That's the masses. That's disabled people and okay, queer people didn't had some rights, but it depended on where you were. I think this has to do with America. They had no rights here. Um, and the black community and the indigenous community. But he talks about it. He talks about how the continuation of class society is not what we wanted. We want the full. We want it to reach communism, and it says by the end of a revolutionary's life. So like probably the youngest revolutionary that's during his lifetime would be about the time it would take. And I like that. I like that they just came out and said it.
Thank you. To James, who earlier saw the human truth behind the civilized falsehoods about this West Indian people's capacities, this promise has never been a matter of dogma or blind faith. Quote, "We live in our daily lives in the upper reaches of derivatives, superstructures of Marxism," he wrote in 1943. "We are not academians and must perforce spend most of our time there. But the foundation and lower floors are huge, unexplored buildings which we enter, if at all, in solitude and leave in silence. They have been shrines too long. We need to throw them open to ourselves and to the public. Perhaps no Marxist has dug deeper into the subsoil of the socialist heritage, from its distant origins to the philosophic foundation stoned of the, oh my gosh, the I gotta look up this word.
If I remember correctly, it was fructifying.
Probably.
Fructify.
To bear fruit, to make something productive, or to yield the profitable results. Fructifying columns and arches, which have been considered the holiest of holy additions. From the colonial background of the Caribbeans in the metropolitan London, from Harlem to Detroit to Africa, James felt his confidence in the basic capacity and desires of plain people to be justified. Quote, "The unending murders and destructions of peoples, the bestial passions, and the sadism, the cruelties and the lusts, all the manifestations of barbarism are unparalleled in the history. But this barbarism exists only because nothing else can surpass the readiness for sacrifice, the democratic instincts and creative powers of the great mass of people." As James wrote, the task of the revolutionaries to build upon those perceptions, those desires, has been often and sadly disappointed, but nothing short of nuclear holocaust encompassing the whole planet can obliterate the revolutionary option. That's the end of that chapter. Part 2, writings for the Trotskyist Press, 1934 to 1949. So we're going into this Trotskyist phases, I think. So, all right, here we go. What's up, Dialectical Medicine? Whew. Revolution and black people. The black people's revolutionary history is rich, inspiring, and unknown. Black revolted against the slave raiders in Africa. They revolted against the slave traders in the Atlantic Passage. They revolted on the plantations. The docile black person is a myth. Slaves on slave ships jumped overboard, went on vast hunger strikes, attacked the crews. There are records of slaves overcoming the crew and taking the ship into the harbor. Defeat the tremendous revolutionary daring. In British Guiana, during the 18th century, the black slaves revolted, seizing the Dutch colony, and held it for years. They withdrew to the interior, forced the whites to sign a treaty of peace, and have remained free to this day. Every Caribbean colony, particularly Jamaica and San Domingo and Cuba, the largest islands, had its settlements of Maroons, bold black people who had fled into the wilds and organized themselves to defend their freedom. In Jamaica, the British government, after vainly trying to suppress them, accepted their existence by treaties of peace, scrupulously observed by both sides over many years, and then broken with the British treachery. In America, black people made nearly 150 distinct revolts against slavery. The only place where black people did not revolt in the pages of capitalist historians. All these revolutionary histories can come as a surprise only to those who, whatever international they belong to, whether second, third, or fourth, have not yet ejected from their system the
I'm lost.
I don't know if it's precarious.
It sounds like yeah.
Just look it up.
Pertinacia.
Let's just look it up.
Something like that.
Let's just look it up. TINACOU. Oh wait, no. IOUS. Pertinacious. Holding firmly to an opinion, propose, or course of action, often in the point of being stubbornly or annoyingly persistent. Pertinacious lies of Anglo-Saxon capitalism. It is not strange that black people revolted. It would have been strange if they had not. But the Fourth International, whose business is revolution, I swear to God, every time I read, I get fucking heartburn. As not to prove that black people were or are a revolutionary as any group of oppressed people.
Okay, it's been 24 hours. Take another one of those pills.
I took one this morning. That has its place in agitation. What we as Marxists have to see is the tremendous role played by black people in the transformation of Western civilization from feudalism to capitalism. It is only from this vantage ground that we shall be able to appreciate and prepare for the still greater role they must of necessity play in the transition from capitalism to socialism. What are the decisive dates in the modern history of Great Britain, France, and America? 1789, the beginning of the French Revolution. 1832, the passing of the Reform Bill in Britain. In 1865, the crushing of the slave power in America by the northern states. Each of these dates marks a definitive stage in the transition from feudalism to capitalist societies. The exploitation of millions of black people had been the basic factor in the economic development of each of these three nations. It It was reasonable, therefore, to expect the black question to play no less an important role in the resolution of the problems that face each society. No one in the pre-revolutionary days, however, even faintly foresaw the magnitude of the contributions that black people were to make. Today, Marxists have far less accused for falling into the same mistake. The black and the French Revolution, black people in the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a bourgeois revolution and the basis of bourgeoisie wealth was the slave trade and the slave plantations in the colonies. Later, there be no mistakes about this. Quote, the sad irony of human history, says Gerards, the fortunes created by Bordeaux at Nantes by the slave trade gave to the bourgeoisie that pride which needed liberty and contributed to human emancipation. The Gaston Martin, the historian of the slave trade, sums it up thus: though the bourgeoisie traded in other things than slaves, upon the success or failures of the traffic, everything else depended. Therefore, when the bourgeoisie proclaimed the rights of men in general, with the necessary reservations, one of these was that these rights should extend to the French colonies. In 1789, the French colony trade was 11 million pounds, 2/3 of the overseas trade of France. British colonial trade at that time was only 5 million pounds. What price French abolition? There was an abolitionist society to which Brissot, Robespierre, Mirabeau, Lafayette, Condorcet, and many such famous men belonged even before 1789. Look, I got another visible restriction. Go figure. Right in the middle of things. But liberals are liberals. Face to face with the revolution, they were ready to compromise. They would leave the 500,000 slaves in their slavery, but at least the biracial people, men of property, including slaves and education, could have been equal rights with the white colonies. Let me do something real quick. Hold on, let's do this. He's being cute. Fuck it. There we go.
Okay, I want to do that.
See, there you go.
Colonials.
There you go. All right. See, I'm alive. I'm a real person. I'm a real boy.
You're not. That's a lie.
I know. I'm just kidding. I'm going off like the movie. You know what I mean?
Okay. And the word was colonials.
The white colonial magnates refused concession, and they were people to be reckoned with. Aristocrats by birth or marriage, bourgeoisie by their trade connections with the maritime bourgeoisie. They opposed all change in the colonies that would diminish the social and political domination. The maritime bourgeoisie, concerned about their millions of investments, supported the colonial and against 11 million pounds of trade per year. The radical politicians were helpless. It was the revolution that kicked them from behind and forced them forward. First of all, the revolution in France. The Girondins, right wing of the Jacobins club, overthrew the pro-royalist, the Foulents, and came to power in March 1792. And secondly, the revolution in the colonies. The biracial people in San Domingo revolted in 1770, following a few months later by the slave revolt in August 1791. Do you think I can get a couple of freaking of those Tums? Do you think?
Yeah, if you want to take a break, you can just come get some, or you can get them at the end of the reading.
We'll see how bad it gets. On April 4th, 1792, the Gorendians granted political and social rights to the biracial peoples. They use the N word, by the way, everybody. The big bourgeoisie agreed for the colonial aristocrats after vainly trying to win biracial support for independence, decided to hand the colony over to Britain rather than tolerate interference with their system. All these slave owners, French nobility and French bourgeoisie, colonial aristocrats and biracial peoples were agreed that the slave revolt would be suppressed and the slaves remain in their slavery. The slaves, however, refused to listen to the threats, and no promise were made to them, led from beginning to end by men who had themselves been slaves and were unable to read or write. They fought one of the greatest revolutionary battles in history. Before the revolution, they had seemed subhuman. Many of the slaves had to be whipped before he could be got to move from where he sat. The revolution transformed them into heroes. The island of San Domingo was divided into two colonies, one French and the other Spanish. The colonial government of the Spanish Bourbons supported the slaves in their revolt against the French Republic. And many rebel bands took service with the Spaniards. The French colonials invited Pitt to take over the colony. And when war was declared between France and England in 1793, the English invaded the island. The English expedition, welcomed by all the white colonials, captured town after town in the south and west of French San Domingo. The Spaniards, operating with the famous Toussaint Louverture, an ex-slave, invaded the colony from the east. British and Spaniards were gobbled up as much as they could before the time for sharing came. In these matters, wrote the British minister, Dundas, to the governor of Jamaica, the more we have, better our pretensions. On June 4th, Port-au-Prince, the capital of San Domingo, fell. Meanwhile, another British expedition had captured Martinique, Guadeloupe, and other French islands, bearing. Okay, I gotta go get him. I'll be right back. Can someone bring him to me? Because the cat will want to leave and everything. Is it okay? Can you bring me a couple? Is it okay? He can just come in. Wait, is the door unlocked?
Hold on a second.
Okay, thank you. Where was I at? Okay. Meanwhile, another British expedition had captured Martinique, Guadeloupe, and the other French islands, bearing a miracle of colonial trade of France, the richest in the world, was in the hands of her enemies and would be used against the revolution. But here the French masses took a hand. August 10th, 1792, was the beginning of the revolution triumph in France. The Paris masses and their supporters all over France in 1789, indifferent to colonial questions, were now strikingly. Come on in. Thank you so much. I'll bring it back, okay? Thank you. Oh. I hate the initial taste of these things. Okay, sorry everybody. Hopefully this will help. We're now striking the revolutionary frenzy and every abuse of the old regime, and none of the former tyrants were so hated as the aristocrats of the skin. Revolutionary generosity, resentment at the betrayal of the colonies to the enemies of the revolution, impotence in the face of the British Navy. These swept the conventions of this feat on February 2nd, 1794, without a debate, to decree the abolition of black slavery, and at last gave its sanction to the Black Revolt. The news trickled through somehow to the French Caribbeans. Victor Hughes and a a biracial person, one of the greatest personalities produced by the Revolution, managed to break through the British blockade and carry the official notice of the manumission of the biracial and black people of the Caribbean islands. Then occurred the miracle. Black people and biracial people dressed themselves in the revolutionary colors and singing revolutionary songs. They turned on the British and Spaniards, their allies of yesterday, with little more for revolutionary France than its moral support. They drove the British and Spaniards from their conquest and carried the war into enemy territory. The British, after 5 years of trying to reconquer the French colonies, were finally driven out in 1798. Few know the magnitude and the importance of that defeat, sustained at the hands of Victor Hughes in the smaller islands and of Toussaint Louverture and Ragoud of Saint Domingos, Fortescue and the Tory historian of the British armies, estimated the total loss to Britain at 100,000 men. Yet in the whole of the Peninsular War, Wellington lost from all causes, killed in battle, sickness, desertion, only 40,000 men. British blood and British treasures were poured out in profusion in the Caribbean island campaign. This was the reason for Britain's weaknesses in Europe during the crucial years of 1793 to 1798. Let Fortescue himself speaks, quote, "The secret of England's impotence for the first 6 years of the war may be said to lie in the two fatal words of San Domingo." British historians blame chiefly the fever, as if San Domingo was the only place in the world that European imperialism had met fever. Whatever the neglect or distortion of later historians, the French revolutionaries themselves knew that the black question meant to the revolution. The constituent and legislator, the conventions were repeatedly thrown into disorder by the colonial debates. This had given repercussions in the internal struggles, as well as the revolutionary defense of the Republic, says Jaures. It's Jaures with a hyphen above the E. Okay, undoubtedly, but for the compromises of Barnave and all of his party on the colonial question, the general attitude of the assembly after the fight in Verniers would have been different. Excluding the masses of Paris, no portion of the French Empire played in proportion to its size so grandiose a role in the French Revolution as the 500,000 black people and biracial people in the remote Caribbean islands. The Black Revolution in San Domingo choked at its source one of the most powerful economic streams of the 18th century, with the defeat of the British, and black proletarians defeated the biracial people. Third estate in a bloody civil war. Immediately after, Bonaparte, representative of the most reactionary elements of the new French bourgeoisie, attempted to restore slavery to San Domingo. Black people defeated an expedition of some 50,000 men, and with the assistance of the biracial people, carried the revolution to its logical conclusion. They changed the name of San Domingo to Haiti and declared the island independent. This black revolt had a profound effect on the struggle for the cessation of the slave trade. We can trace this closer connection best by following the development of abolition in the British Empire, the first great blow to the Troy domination of Britain, and at feudalism in France, for that matter, was struck by the Declaration of Independence of 1776, when Jefferson wrote that all men are created equal. He was drawing up the death warrant of feudal society, wherein men were by law divided into unequal classes. Crispus Antox, a black person, was the first man killed by the British in the war that followed. It was no isolated or chance phenomenon. Black people thought it was a war for freedom. They could win their own. It has been estimated that of the 30,000 men in Washington's army, 4,000 were black people. The American bourgeoisie did not want them. They forced themselves in. But San Domingo black people fought in the war also. The French monarchy came to the assistance of the American Revolution. The black people from the French colonies pushed themselves into the French expeditionary forces of 1,900 French troops who recaptured Savannah. 100 were volunteers from the French colony of San Domingo. 10 years later, some of these men, Ragoud, André Lambert, Bavinas, and others, some say Christophe, also, with their political and military experience, would be foremost among the leaders in San Domingo revolution long before Karl Marx wrote, quote, "The workers of the world unite. The revolution was international." Can you do me a favor? Tell Scott thank you. It helped a lot. The loss of the slave-holding American colonies took much cotton out of the ears of the British bourgeoisie. Adam Smith and Arthur Young, heralds of the industrial revolution and wage slavery, were already preaching against the waste of chattel slavery. Deaf up to the 1783, the British bourgeoisie now heard and looked again at the Caribbeans. Their own colonies were bankrupt. They were losing the slave trade to French and British rivals, and half of the French slaves that they brought were going to San Domingo. And the Indian, this is from India of the 18th century. Why should they continue to do this? In 3 years, the first abolitionist society was formed, and Pitt began to clamor for the abolition of slavery. Oh my gosh, I got a no appeal. I even showed I even showed my precious kitty. For the sake of humanity, no doubt, says Gaston Martin, quote, but also, be it well understood, to ruin French commerce, end quote. With the War of 1793, Pitt cherishing a prospect of winning, San Domingo piped down on abolition. But the Black Revolution killed the aspiration of both France and Britain. The Treaty of Vienna in 1814 gave to France the right to recapture San Domingo. The Haitians swore that they would rather destroy the island. With the abandonment of the hopes to regain San Domingo, the British abolished the slave trade in 1807. America followed in 1808. If the Caribbean's interest in Britain was one of the greatest financial arsenals of the new bourgeoisie, whence the diatribes of Burke, Whig spokesman, against Hastings and Clive. The Caribbean interest, though never so powerful as in France, was the cornerstone of the feudal oligarchy. The loss of America was the beginning of their decline. But for the Black Revolution, San Domingo would have strengthened them enormously. The reformist British bourgeoisie delabored them, and the weakest link in the oligarchical chain. Yeah, I know they don't want me to. The people don't want me to say that. They want me to say Caribbeans. I don't know. Yeah, but East India, yeah.
Yeah. That they consider that a slur. And on top of considering it a slur, it's just not correct, because they're referring to it as East India, and that's why no, it's not India. It's not anywhere near India. Wrong, white people again. So we either call it by its indigenous name, which I can't remember off the top of my head right now, or we call it the Caribbean.
Yeah, east and west. Yeah. I think so. I'm not sure. I'm not really good geographically, so I don't know. The Great Slave Revolt in Jamaica in 1831 helped to convince those who had doubts in Britain better emancipation for above than below, anticipated the Czar by 30 years. One of the first acts of the victorious reformers was to abolish slavery in the British colonies. But for the Black Revolution in San Domingo, abolished the emancipation might have been postponed another 30 years. Oh, it's actually India? I don't know. I'm going to have to look it up. But I get what you're saying. We'll look it up. Abolish did not come to France until the Revolution of 1848. The production of beer, sugar, introduced by Bonaparte, grew by leaps and bounds.
Sugar.
What?
Beet. Sugar.
I did say that.
This is beer sugar.
Okay. And bounds a place of cane sugar interests based on the slavery of Martinique and Guadeloupe, increasingly on the defense. One of the first acts of the revolutionary government of 1848 was to abolish slavery, but as the 1794, the decree was merely a registration of an accomplished fact. So menacing was the attitude of slaves that in more than one colony, the local government, in order to head off the servile revolution, proclaimed abolition without waiting for authorization from France. Here we go. Listen to that section. That's why I'm confused. Hold on. Let me find out something. What is the difference between... Can you... Hold on a second. I gotta wait. What? What's up?
No, sorry. I was just going to say, Robert, I think, figured it out, because that's what I thought it was, too. I thought it was the Caribbean, along with the other name of it, is because it's on the west side of the east, which is India itself.
What's the difference between East India and West India?
The Caribbean, we're trying to do land back kind of stuff, and the indigenous people don't like the white man's name.
Differentiate South Asia from the Caribbean.
Yeah, but we're going to look up what's the difference between the East India, and West India real quick. So I have to use those names. What is East India and what is West India? Islands.
East India and West India can refer to
Islands.
India, or they can also...
Let's see here. Two different island regions, both in which became highly lucrative European trade territories. So this is what I got. This is the map, what they're talking about.
Right. That's right by India.
That's Asia.
Right,
So-
that's over there by India.
So that's what I got. That could be East
So those
India.
are that would be... Yeah, I think that's east. But the Caribbean one, they even consider it a slur to use the white man's name against their people.
No one's doubting you on that. We're not doubting you on that. We're just looking these up just to make sure.
Yeah, no problem. I don't mind. I was just explaining. It's my autism. I apologize.
You didn't do nothing wrong. We're just making sure we know what's going on, so we're correct on what we're talking about. That's all. I wasn't the influence. Okay, we just wanted to make sure and double check. You did nothing wrong, Joe. I hope you didn't think you did something wrong. Do you think you did something wrong?
Or asked.
Huh?
Like was over explaining.
It's okay. You're fine. No one's upset. I promise you. The only person that might be upset is you. No one else is. We just wanted to clarify, make sure. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. The black. Okay. They use the N-word for the color black. So the black and the Civil War. So I'm sorry.
You would
1940.
take the black man and the Civil War.
But there's more than just black men that are part of this, though. That's
Right, but right. So you could say black people, But like,
well, usually I do that if there's an S at the end of it.
yeah, well, that's why you would just say black man, because it's black
I don't
mankind.
want to do that because I don't want to leave out women.
Well, it's a whole lot better than saying the N-word.
I didn't say the N-word. When did I say the N-word? I didn't say the N-word.
With the O, when every time you explain it like that you're putting the slur in someone's head.
Because though everybody, okay, so everybody knows. That's why. In 1948,
Don't say black or the black, because that takes away their personhood. That's why you have to give them personhood back, which would be either the black people, the black man,
Black folk.
the black folk.
Okay. 1848, the year following the economic crisis of 1847, was the beginning of a new cycle of revolution all over the Western world. European Revolution and Christianism, Chartism in England were defeated. In America, the irresistible conflict between capitalism in the North and the slave system in... What?
Irrepressible.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. Where am I at? In America, the irrepressible conflict between capitalism in the North and the slave system in the South was headed off for the last time by the Compromise of 1850. The political development following the economic crisis of 1857 made further compromise impossible. It was a decade of revolutionary struggle the world over in the colonial and semi-colonial countries. 1857 was the year of the first war in India. Indigenous independence, commonly miscalled the Indigenous Mutiny. In 1858 began the Civil War in Mexico, which ended with the victory of Juarez 3 years later. It was the period of the Taiping Revolution in China, the first great attempt to break the power of the Manchu dynasty. North and South in America moved to their predestined clash unwillingly. Clash unwillingly. But the revolutionary black people helped to participate the issue. For 2 decades before the Civil War began, they were leaving the South in thousands. The revolutionary organization known as the Underground Railway, with daring efficiency and dispatch, drained away the slave owners' human property. Fugitive slaves were the issue of the day. The Fugitive Slave Law of 1850 was at last desperate attempt by the federal government to stop this illegal abolition. 10 northern states replied with personal liberties, laws which nullified the heavy penalties of the 1950 law. Most famous, perhaps, of all the whites and black people who ran the Underground Railway is Harriet Tubman, a black person who had herself escaped from slavery. She made 19 journeys into the South and helped her brothers and their wives and 300 other slaves to escape. She made her depredation in enemy territory. Depredation in enemy territory with a price of $40,000 on her head. Josiah Henson, the original of Uncle, not going to say the next one, helped nearly 200 slaves to escape. Nothing so galed the slave owners as this 20-year-old drain on their already bankrupt system. It is unnecessary to detail here the cause of this, the greatest civil war in history. Every black schoolboy knows that the last thing Lincoln had in mind was the emancipation of black people. What is important is that for reasons both internal and external, Lincoln had to draw them into the revolutionary struggle. He said that without emancipation, the North might not have won, and was in all probability right. Thousands of black people were fighting on the Southern side, hoping to win their freedom that way. The abolition decree broke down the social cohesion of the South. It was not only what the North gained, but, as Lincoln pointed out, that what the South lost. I don't know. Maybe. I can't. It could be another person. This might be James. It's hard to tell. Next time I gotta be more clear on that. On the northern side, 220,000 black people fought with such bravery that it was impossible to do with white troops what could be done with them. They fought not only with revolutionary bravery, but with coolness and exemplary discipline. The best of them were filled with revolutionary pride. They were fighting for equality. One company stacked arms before the tent of its commanding officer as a protest against discrimination. Lincoln was also driven to abolition by the pressures of the British working class. Palmerston wanted to intervene on the side of the South, but was opposed in the cabinet of Gladstone. Led by Marx, the British working class was vigorously opposed the war, and it was impossible to hold a post-war meeting anywhere in England. The British Tories derided the claim that the war was for the abolition of slavery. Hadn't Lincoln said so many times? The British workers, however, insisted on seeing that the war was a war of abolition. And Lincoln, for whom British non-interventions was an life and death matter, decreed abolition with a suddenness which shows his fundamental unwillingness to take such a revolutionary step. The abolition was declared in 1863, 2 years before the movement of the Russian peasants, of the joyful hail hailed by Marx, frightened the Tsar into the sub-emancipation of the serfs. The North won its victory in 1865. 2 years later, the British workers won the Second Reform Bill, which gave the franchise of the workers in the towns. The revolutionary cycle was concluded with the defeat of the Paris Commune in 1871. A victory there and a history of Reconstruction would have been far different. Black people and world revolution. They're still, I don't know why they keep doing this. Between 1871 and 1905, the proletarian revolution was dormant. In Africa, black people fought vainly to maintain their independence against the imperialist invasion. But the Russian Revolution of 1905 was the forerunner of a new era that began with the October Revolution in 1917. While 500,000 black people fought with the French Revolution in 1789, today the Socialist Revolution in Europe was at its potential allies, over 120 million black people in Africa, where Lincoln had to seek alliance with the isolated slave population. Today, millions of black people in America have penetrated deeply into industry, have fought side by side with white workers on picket lines, have helped to barricade factories for sit-down strikes, have played their part in the struggle and clash of trade unions and political parties. It is only through the spectacles of historical perspectives that we can fully appreciate the enormous revolutionary potential of the black masses today. 500,000 slaves here in North, hearing the words liberty, equality, and fraternity shouted by millions of Frenchmen thousands of miles away, awoke from their apathy. They occupied the attention of Britain for 6 years, and once again, to quote Fortescue, I can't say his name, partially destroyed the British Army. What of the black people in Africa today? This is a bare outline of the record. French West Africa, 1926 and 1929, 10,000 men fled into the forest swamps to escape French slavery. French Equatorial Africa, 1924 uprising, 1924 through 1925 uprising, 10,000 black people killed. 1928 June to November, rising in Upper Sangha and Lai. 1929, a rising lasting 4 months in Africa, organized an army of 10,000 British West Africa. 1929, a revolt of women.
You missed the period and the beginning of another paragraph.
I'm still on British West Africa.
Yeah, you gotta go back. So the last sentence you were reading was a rising lasting 4 months. The Africans organized an army of 10,000 people.
That's what I did.
Now go on to the next paragraph. You didn't pause. You forgot to pause.
What? Okay. British West Africa, 1929, a revolt of women in Nigeria, 30,000 in number, 83 killed, 87 wounded. 1937, general strike of Gold Coast farmers, joined by the dockers and truck drivers. Belgium, Congo, 1929, revolt in Rwanda, Irundai, thousands killed. 1930 to 1931, revolt in Bampieda, 800 massacred in one place. Koango, South Africa, 1929, strikes and riots in Durban. The Black Quarters was entirely surrounded by troops and bombarded by planes. Since 1953, there has been general strikes with shootings of black people.
1935.
With shootings of black people, thank you, in Rhodesia and Madagascar, in Zanzibar, in the West, in the Caribbeans. There have been general strikes and mass actions such as those islands have not seen since the emancipation from slavery in hundred years ago. Scores have been killed and wounded. The above is only the random selection. Black people in Africa are caged and beaten against the bars continually. It is the European proletariat that holds the key. Let the workers of Britain, France, and Germany say, "Arise, ye children of starvation." As loudly as French revolutionaries said, "Liberty, equality, and fraternity." And what force on earth can hold these black people back? Yeah, it was approved. Good for me. Thank you. All who know anything about Africa knows this. Mr. Norman Lees, a government medical officer in Kenya for 20 years, a member of the British Labour Party, and about a revolutionary as late as Ramsay MacDonald, wrote and studied the Kenya in 1924. 7 years later, he wrote it again. This time he titled his work "A Last Chance in Kenya." The alternative, he said, is revolution. The Caliban of Africa, Leonard Barnes, another milk and water socialist, writes as follows, quote, "So he, the South African white, and the native he holds captive, go spinning down the stream wildly, spinning together all together along the rapids above the great cataract.
Yes.
Both yoke to one omnipotent hour. That is the revolution wrapped in civil paper. The revolution haunts the conservative Englishman. He writes again of the Bantu. They crouched in their corner, nursing a sullen anger and desperately groping for a plan. They will not be many years making up their minds. Time and fate even more prevailing than the portcullis of the Afrikaners are driven them on from the rear. Jesus Christ. Something must give it will to be fate or time. Some comprehensive social or economic construction must take place. But how? By reason of violence. By violence. He poses an alternative that are in reality one. The change will take place by violence and by reason combined. We have a false idea of black people. They didn't say people. Yeah. Let us return again to San Domingo Revolution with its paltry 500,000 slaves. Writing in 1789, the very year of the revolution, the colonists said of them that they were, quote, unjust, cruel, barbarous, half-human, treacherous, deceitful, thieves, drunkards, proud, not active, unclean, shameless, jealous, to fury of, and cowards. 3 years later, Romy, the French commissioner, noted that even though fighting with the royalist Spaniards, the black revolutionaries organized themselves into armed sections of popular bodies, rigidly observed all the forms of Republican organization. They adopted slogans and rally cries. They appointed chiefs and sections of divisions who, by means of their slogan, could call them out and send them back home again, from one end of the province to the other. They threw up from out of their depths a soldier and statesman of the first rank, Toussaint Louverture, and secondary leader, fully able to hold their own with the French in war, diplomacy, and administration. In 10 years, they organized an army that fought Bonaparte's army on level terms. Quote, but what men these black people are, how they fight and how they die, wrote a French officer looking back at the last campaign after 40 years from his dying bed. Leclerc, Bonaparte's brother-in-law and commander-in-chief of the French expedition, wrote home, quote, I have a false idea of black people. And again, we have in Europe a false idea of the country in which we fight and the men whom we fight against. We need to know and reflect on these things today, menaced during its whole existence of imperialism. European and American, the Haitians have never been able to overcome the better heritage of their past. Yet the revolution of 500,000 not only helped to protect the French Revolution, but initiated great revolutions in its own right. When the Latin American revolutionaries saw the 500,000 of slaves could fight and win, they recognized the reality of their own desire for the independence. Boulevard, broken and ill, went to Haiti. The Haitians nursed him back to health, gave him money and arms with which he sailed to the mainland. He was defeated, went back to Haiti, was once more welcomed and assisted, and it was from Haiti that he sailed to start a final campaign which ended in independence of 5 states. Today, 150 million black people knit into the world economy infinitely more tightly than their ancestors of 100 years ago, will far surpass the work of that San Domingo 500,000 in the work of social transformation. The continuous raising in Africa, the refusal of the Ethiopian warriors to submit to Mussolini, the American black people who volunteered to fight in Spain and in the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, as Ragoud and Bovinas had volunteered to fight in America, tempering their swords against the enemy abroad for use against the enemy at home. These lightnings announced the thunder. The racial prejudice that now stands in the way will bow before the tremendous impact of the proletarian revolution. In Flint, during the sit-down strike of 2 years ago, 700 Southern whites, soaked from infancy in racial prejudice, found themselves besieged in the General Motors building with one black person among them. When the time came for the first meal, black people, knowing who and what his companions were, held himself in the background. Immediately it was proposed that there should be no racial discrimination among the strikers. 700 hands went up together in the face of the class enemy, the men recognizing that race prejudice was a subordinate thing which could not be allowed to disrupt their struggle. Black people was invited to take his seat first and after the victory was won. In the triumphant march out of the factory, he was given the first place. That is the prognosis of the future in Africa, in America, and the Caribbean islands. On the national international scale, the millions of black people will raise their heads, rise up from their knees and write some of the most massive and brilliant chapters in the history of international socialism. December 1939. 6. Native Sons and Revolutions. A review of Native Sons by Richard Wright. So this is by Richard Wright. Yeah, see, like even Rocket said I said the wrong thing too. I probably said 1735, didn't I? Are you there? Are you there?
I'm here. I'm sorry, I was in between the two readings. Scott was showing me a picture of someone.
No worries. I think I said 1735, didn't I? Instead of 18, 19?
Probably, but it'll be all right. We'll get through it.
Black Bigger Thomas, native son, stifled by an unworldly, rebellious against white Americans treatment of him. By accident murdered a white girl. For him, this murder is the beginning of a new life. In striking such a blow against his hated enemies, and the struggle to outwit them and invade capture, he stunted personality finds scopes to expand. Before he is sentenced to death, the sincere effort of two white communists to save him teach him that all whites are not his enemies, that he is not alone, that there is a solidarity of all the oppressed. Such finely audacious and magnificently simple is the theme sprung from such a wealth of emotions. Oh my gosh, again, validity and presented with such power of literary realization that it forces discussion and unwilling consideration of the world's numbers one minority problem, the black question in America. Finally, I can't believe it. Like, this is like the 5th time, like, I appealed. And, like, just leave me alone now. Like, you already restricted me. Just leave me alone now. You know?
Right. Do you need some more times? Like 2 more?
No, I'm good.
You're
The
good?
book-
Okay, I was worried.
No, I'm fine. The book, therefore, is not only a literary, but also a political event. Here we are concerned with the revolutionary interpretation of Bigger Thomas, an aspect not unnaturally neglected or misunderstood by all reviewers, Marxists or otherwise. The career of Bigger Thomas is a symbol and a prototype of the black masses in the proletarian revolution. Bigger hates white people with a consuming hatred. So do the great masses of black people. Quite often, the hate is hidden. Sometimes it is buried deep out of sight. Sometimes it is twisted into its opposite, a passionate religiosity. But it is here, it is there. The speakers, particularly black speakers, can always incite it from any black gathering. It represents 10 generations' experience of injustice, of humiliation, of suppressed resentment and bitterness. But if black people hate whites, they also fear them. Their knowledge, their power, their ruthlessness, also a accumulated experience of the generations. The sleeping volcano. This hate will be one of the most powerful forces in the black revolution. In the South, whites know quite well that fire smolders behind the difference of and the humility. Quote, if you let a N-word forget himself, you will have to kill him, end quote. It is one of their commonest expressions. As long as society in the South maintains its integrity, that black people will continue to be docile. But in the solid South, does not remain solid. If that society ever goes to pieces, then wherever black people outnumber whites, we shall see some of the bloodiest massacres that this continent has ever known. Whoever doubts this should study the slave revolts of Spartacus and the Black Revolt in San Domingo. The end of the San Domingo Revolt was the complete annihilation of the white population. America differs from San Domingo in one important aspect. The black people are the minority, and in the proletarian revolution, the white proletariat of the North will be dominant. Its aim will not to tear the poor whites of the South.
Its aim will be to tear.
Okay. The poor whites of the South from the leadership of the Southern landlords and capitalists by precept, an example to make them aware of their solidarity with black people. The strength and organization of the Northern proletariat and the extent of the social disintegration of the Southern driving black people and poor whites closer together will shape the course of the struggle. In the profound sense, Bigger Thomas is a typical black person. His hatred of whites, his sense of his wrongs and forcibly limited life, his passionate desire to strike at his enemies, all this is racial. All this is racial. He is different from other black people only in the fact that his nature is such that he cannot contain himself. Bigger, having killed by accident, now has to save himself. He must match his wits against the whole powerful white world, which has hitherto held him in chains. And in this conflict, he finds himself. The murder of Mary is an accident, rooted through it is in the social order. But his acceptance of full responsibility for it is a revolutionary act. The scheme, to plan to fight, this is to be free. In this bold stroke, the central theme of this book, Wright has distilled the very essence of what it is in the black people's future. There you go. The great masses of black people carry in their hearts the heavy heritage of slavery and their present degradation. Such has been their past. It is their present, and as far as they can see, it is their future. It is the revolution which will lift these millions from their knees. Nobody can do it for them. Personalities will be freed from the centuries of chains and shame, as Bigger's personality was freed by violent actions against their tyrants. It is on the evening after the battle, with smoking rifles and bloody bayonets, that black people will be able to look at all white men in the face, will be able to respect himself and be respected. Wright notes that Bigger had no confidence in other black people. They were too afraid and conscious of fear to trust one another. That confidence in himself, which Bigger's earned by the unwitting murder of Mary, millions of black people will gain only by the revolution. There is no other way for them. Bigger's fight. The finest passage in this book describes Bigger's fight against capture, and it's curious how blind all have been to the overwhelming significance of this. What hero in the literature ever fought his fight with the courage of such determination? As he reads in the paper that the crime has been pinned on him. Quote, he is right. His right hand twitched. He wanted a gun in that hand. He got his gun from his pocket and held it. He read again. Thenceforward he fights. The murder of Bessie, his girlfriend, is subordinate to his great purpose to fight against these tyrants and torturers. He couldn't leave Betsy behind, and he couldn't take her. Therefore, he had to destroy her. In the abstract, it is a revolting crime. But whoever has entered into the spirit of the new Biggers must see it as he saw it. 8,000 white men with guns and gas were looking for him. Without bravado, without self-pity, he fought. A small black object fell near his head on the snow, hissing, shooting forth a white vapor like a blowing plum, which was carried away from him by the wind. Tear gas. With the movement of his head, he knocked it off the tank. After another came, and he knocked it off. Two others came, and he shoved them off. He blew them. The wind blew strong from the lake. It carried the gas away from his eyes and nose. He heard men yell, "Stop it! The wind blows with this way." He's throwing him back. The bedlam in the street rose higher. More men climbed through the trap doors to the roof. He wanted to shoot, but remember that he had 3 bullets left. He would shoot when they were closer, and he would save 1 bullet for himself. They would take him alive. They will not take him alive. Come on down, boy. Ooh. He did not move. He laid with gun in hand, waiting, when directly under his eyes 4 white fingers caught hold of the icy edge of the water tank. He gritted his teeth and struck the white fingers with the butt of his gun. They vanished, and he heard a thud as a body landed on the snow-covered roof. He laid awaiting for more attempts to climb up, but none came. Quote, "It's no use fighting." I'm not going to do that again. "You're caught. Come on down." Because the reason why I won't say the boy world, I just did, is because that's how they see adult black people as children. So they call them boys or girls because we don't see them as mature. So it's huge microaggression.
And then on top of it, we turn around and call your young babies boys and men. Young men, and they're not. They're children. They're small children and babies.
He knew that they were afraid, and yet he knew that it would soon be over. One way or another, they would either capture or kill him. He was surprised that he was surprised that he was not afraid. Under it all, some part of his mind was beginning to stand aside. He was going behind his curtain, his wall, looking out with sullen stares of contempt. He was outside of himself now, looking on. He laid under the winter sky, lit with tall gleams of whirling lights, hearing thirsty screams and hungry shots. He clutched his gun, defiant, unafraid, more than the mere desire to live was a stake. It was the bursting pride of the spirit, long cramped and oppressed, that found itself free at last. All students of revolutionary histories know it. The legions of Spartacus, Cromwell's, Ironside, and Paris enraged. The Russian workers defending Petrograd against the Yobajets, the Spanish workers defending Madrid, and the march of the Chinese communists across China in 1936. That was the spirit of defiance and the determination in which beggars fought. The person fighting for a clear realization of what was happening to him, beggar attained the highest stage of his development. He learned that 2 white communists are his friend. Thank you for approving. They proved it in action. Here again, beggars experience typifies another important revolutionary truth. Masses learn by experience, not by propaganda. The black masses in particular, in particular, will have to be shown solidarity in action and not logic. There will be many black people in the Revolutionary Party, but the vast majority will in all probability learn the lesson of class solidarity as beggars learned it. And we'll stop there. Wright is a revolutionary novelist.
So I guess we're just doing the stories. They're trying to give you the significance of black revolutions and how they influenced. And it's great because this is not taught, nor is it readily available to look at unless you got to find the damn books to look for it. 101. So
Yeah, I love it. I love how he goes into detail and he talks about the revolution and how, and some white people do need to hear that you've got to prove it and nothing you say will change it. Actually, anything you say is worse.
yeah, they had to prove it by action. That's for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. But let's see here. We're going to go the novelists. Oh, holy shit. I'm going to finish this off actually right now because it's only a couple of paragraphs. My bad. So it's going to be something else. Sorry, my bad, everybody. Did Wright consciously...
Look, give me a second. Just pick the book back up.
It's just a couple paragraphs.
Okay, go ahead.
Did Wright cautiously optimize black revolutionary struggle in the career of Beggar Thomas? The question is irrelevant. The artist, by method compounded of conscious logic and his own intuition, observes society and experienced life. He comes to his conclusion and embodies them in character, scenes, and dramatic situations, according to the depths of his penetration and the sweep of his net. His capacity to integrate and reproduce his rights, his novels, paintings, and his picture, to or compose his symphony. Psychologists, historians, politicians, and revolutionaries draw on his own experience, see symbols, parallelism, depth, and perspective unsuspected by the creator. The artist can see the truth and nothing but the truth, but no one can expect him to see the whole truth. Our age literature, especially literature of this kind, cannot be divorced from politics. Wright is a Stalinist in this novel, and scrupulous artistic integrity enables him to draw white communists, if not with the same success as black people, yet without bias and subversions to the Stalinist conception of the party and the party line. But the trends of dangerous road. But he treads a dangerous road. Stalinism was destroyed the literary and artistic life of Russia. It was ruined. Marlux, I can't say his name, one of the most gifted and contemporary writers. In the evil garden, nothing creative flourishes. The artist in uniform soon cases to be an artist. The Stalinist part past master in the art of suborning, corrupting. It will be a pity if they succeed in preventing the blightening this splendid talent. Now we're going Trotsky's place in history. There we go. Okay, chapter 7. So that is 102. There we go. We'll stop at 102. Sorry, I lied.
All right, 102 sounds perfect.
There we go. All right, Trotsky's place in history. I wonder what this is going to be like.
You know, but this is when we're going to get called a Trotskyist the most.
I don't care. Not a Trotskyist.
I know that.
Learned a little bit about what he thought about the permanent revolution, just looking ahead. So that's cool.
Cool.
All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close it all out. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Hold up. That went to the wrong person. Let me try again.
Are you?
I was trying to give something to Yusuf and accidentally give it to you. Alright. Love you, bye.
All right, talk to you later.